my family were farmers, and from small on, we had jobs to do,
Yeah.
and we had to get them done because my father and mother were old German people, and they were strict.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were supposed to be home at night, by 1 o'clock, something was wrong after that. And flat
You had an
tires.
hour, excuse me, you had an hour longer than we did. It was 12 o'clock at our house. It wasn't 1 o'clock, it was 12 o'clock.
You mean
Oh, 12 o'clock.
a.m.?
When we were starting to go out and date and do
Yeah.
things like that, like you,
Midnight.
Yeah, but I'm a little bit older like you, and they've weakened a little bit.
You can have a lot more fun in that extra hour,
Why,
can't you?
sure.
Get in trouble.
And then after the
That's when the
parents found out, these kids was acting up,
Yeah.
you gotta get home.
Yeah.
That right?
that's right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess like I did with Maurice. What's your name and where are you from?
Well, my name's Earl Grotefett, everybody knows me,
Yeah.
and I originally come from Marine. They run me out, and I married a little gal from Evansville. And nobody wanted her anymore.
That's not true, Earl.
Oh, I know it's not true.
Because I know her.
If they believe this, they better get somebody else.
Just tell them shit about this one too, wasn't
better.
you?
Yeah, my wife was 5'2"
See?
Eyes are blue.
Yeah.
and eyes are blue.
Is that right?
I think they were brown.
But the song is
Yeah.
Eyes are blue.
We were very fortunate. We traveled all over the world. So the good Lord is very gracious to me and my little wife.
That's wonderful. That's a great story. So, young lady, we're doing this so we can record all these stories today. So, what is your name and where are you from and what year you were born?
Oh.
My name is
Oh.
Lorna Britt Harris,
Mm-hmm.
and I was born here in Highland, and I've lived in Highland most of my life.
Okay.
And I think I was more or less raised like Earl was. I never lived on a farm, but my folks were German and also from Switzerland, my heritage. And they were very strict too. But I went to the Catholic school, and being in a Catholic school, very strict there too. And you respected everybody or you got in trouble. You were honest or you got in trouble. I know one day I lied to my teacher in St. Paul School, a nun, and after school was finished, she always had read a story to us the last 15 minutes.
Mhm.
And before that was finished, she called me up and she said, "Lorna, you told me a lie. And I want to tell and show the children that you don't lie, and you don't lie to me." And she had a bar of soap, and she would put soap on my mouth
Oh.
in front of all the kids. I was ashamed. So it just happened that day that I had a friend that was coming home to play for an hour or two before supper. And the first thing we got in the house, she said, "Mrs. Ritt, your Lorna told a lie to school and she had to have her mouth washed out with soap." Mother said, "I think, Margie, you better go home." She said, "I don't think this is a good day for you to play with Lorna." So I was sent to my room. I came down for supper, and Mother said, "Tell Dad what you did." And I told Dad, and Dad said, "You'll just have dinner, but no dessert, and go to your room." And that was it. I knew from then I should never lie.
Wow.
It was a good teaching.
Good lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were strict, we were honest, we had to do what was right, and they taught me ambition.
That's very important. Yeah, how did they teach you ambition? That's an interesting word that you chose.
Well, I saw my father have ambition.
He showed it, he lived it.
And my sister was very sharp, and she was valedictorian in her class. And I wanted to do the same thing. So I ended up valedictorian in my class. And I just wanted ambition. I just wanted to do things.
Exactly.
And I did that most of my life.
And you learned that from watching someone else. So what other advice do you have for kids starting out? Because I think ambition is, I don't hear that very often, so I think ambition is very important. Do you have any other advice for kids starting out today?
To be honest, don't lie. Be truthful with everybody.
Including yourself, I guess, too. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Lauren. So let's shift a little bit. Bob, you got your turn. So any advice that you have for kids today?
I guess I was going to say the work ethic, but there's a flaw to that. So I guess you look at things as they start and as they end. And I would say most important thing in a person's life is accountability. Because in the end, all the way through life, you're going to be accountable. You write the record. It is what it is. And even in every aspect of life, physical, spiritual, psychological, accountability seems to be the big issue of who you really were. And so on.
That's a great piece of advice. So, okay. Anything else you want to add to that? I think it's good. That's really good.
I think one of the greatest things I ever encountered was the course by Carnegie, and it had to do with the American work ethic. And we totally lost that. We lost our moral foundations, and we lost the work ethic. And so now everybody believes that they're a victim and somebody owes them something.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And
It's very serious problem.
it's just as what Earl was saying, and Lorna. I think the conditions demanded that work ethic. The older you go back, you realize we didn't have a lot of children just for the sexual fun of it. We had the aspect of we needed children to run an agrarian culture. We needed farm help and so on. Well, all of that is sort of diminished into it's no longer a requirement. You can actually make it through life pretty good, just leaning on the government if you want to.
That seems to be.
And if you're smart enough, you can make that system work for you.
Yeah.
But as a person, I think we're accountable to each other. We're accountable to our nation, we're accountable to the world, and ultimately we're accountable to God. And that's why I didn't use the work ethic, because when it gets to the spiritual aspect, your ability to work drops out. So,
Right. Now, you mentioned Carnegie. Are you referring to Dale Carnegie?
yeah.
Okay, do you remember what program what tape that? You mentioned a name to that? If people might want to know what course that they could
It
look
was,
at.
it was either Carnegie or Rockefeller, but I think it was Dale Carnegie. And,
Okay.
And it was titled something like The American Work Ethic. And I wanted to study it. When I learned about it in sort of my midlife, but the reality of it was I got it from people who grew up with it, like Earl and Lorna and you folks. It was still in fashion. And so you didn't have to take Carnegie's course, you just had to look around at the people around you, and they lived it.
That's right.
And in a way, it was easier for me to learn it watching people who are living it. And I wasn't a good book learner. And, but I always wanted to study that course.
Right.
May I interrupt with about Dale Carnegie? Mr. Spindler in town taught Dale Carnegie. And my husband took that course.
Did a lot for him,
Wonderful
didn't it?
course. It was, and I have the books here, and I still have them.
Yeah.
And about Mr. Spindler, our son, John, cut their lawn. But John was very bashful, and this was about when he was in 8th grade. And Mr. Spindler was a friend of Rollins, and mine too. And he came to us one time, and he said, "I love your son, John. He's a very respectful boy, and I like him very well. But he's so shy, he'll never get through the world the way he is. He can't look anybody in the eye, extend his hand." And we were telling John to do that, but he just wouldn't do it. He said, "I'm going to start a Dale Carnegie course for children." And he said, "You got to get that kid in that course." So anyway, he did, and we insisted. John didn't want to go. He just begged not to go. We said, "You got to go." He went, and today he's successful.
That is a great story. I've heard a
He's
lot.
not afraid to talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Dale Carnegie courses do.
Yes.
Great. That's awesome. That's a great story. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, that was very good.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that a
accountability.
lot.
I learn something every week when I come here.
Oh, I
This
do
is very
too.
important.
That's why I hate to miss this.
You don't hear accountability too often.
No.
That's a good word. So, young lady next to Bob, what is your name?
Well, I don't know if my life was exciting like everybody
Yes,
else's.
it is.
I
Yes.
lived on the farm most of my life till I got married.
What is your name?
Pardon?
What is your name? Just for the camera. What is your name and where are you from?
Grandma?
Okay, well, that's acceptable.
My name is Anita Zuri. I'm originally from Alhambra.
Okay, what year were you born? You can lie. What
What year was I born?
What year were you born?
I don't know if I was ever born, I was just dropped off.
Grandma was dropped off.
1932.
Great, well, thank you. So, now what advice do you have then for kids just starting out today? What advice would you give kids?
That did
What
what?
advice would you give young kids that are starting out their lives today?
For one most important thing, you never lie to nobody and you never cheat to nobody either.
Mhm.
Because that's one thing my dad always said. You never lie and you never cheat.
Mhm.
And we never did. As far as I know, my kids never did. But I lost my son very young. He was only 50.
Hmm.
But he was a great kid.
Mhm.
So
Who taught you your lesson? Who gave you advice in your life? The most advice. Who do you respect that taught you the most?
well, most my mom and my dad, that's the only two that ever taught me what I know.
Hmm.
But I lived on the farm a lot, and so we always had to be honest with what we did. You better never lie, because if Dad caught you, look out.
Mm-hmm.
He won't hurt you, but you just didn't lie.
Yeah. So did you work hard on the farm?
Oh, I sure did. I had a brother that made me milk my first cow when I was only 6.5 years old.
Really?
And my dad said to me one day, "Why are you milking?" I said, "Because Joe told me to." And his wife told me several years after they got married, "He sure got in a lot of trouble for what he did with you, for you." I said, "Well, I didn't say that, but I said, thought to myself, good thing."
He was the troublemaker in the group, I bet.
For me, he was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. So, Anita, thank you very much. And young lady, your name and where you were born, what
Okay.
year?
I'm Dolores Shawshank Kirkus from Edwardsville, Illinois. And I was born in 1927. And lived there, you know, all my life until I got married. And then I always wanted to do something, you know, in hospitals and that. And so I went and studied to be a lab technician. And I was doing my internship at the hospital in St. Louis, and I met my husband and he was from Wisconsin. And he was going to school for radiology, x-ray. And of course, we met and we got married, and we had 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. And I mean, we've just been medical people all the time. He worked at the hospital here in Highland for 50 years and 6 months. And I worked in the lab, and I worked in pharmacy 17 years. And I still volunteer there today, had for many years. And we were always taught to treat people the way you want to be treated. You know, if you want to have a good life, and treat people the way you want to be treated. And I don't know, I just had a happy life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know anything else much
Well, that's
to say, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's an important lesson. That's important advice as well. I think Dale Carnegie said the same similar things in his books. Treat people the way you would like to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I know the one statement in our life, you know, the children would say, "Oh, you know, I wasn't treated right," or, you know, and they were unhappy. They did something bad to me. I said, "Just remember, one day they're going to stand before God, and He's going to take care of them." And that was a saying in our family the whole time, because, you know, they'd say, "Oh, so-and-so didn't treat me right, and I didn't like this," and I give them that look. And they said, "Mom, we know, treat treat them, don't worry, God's going to take care of them, then, you know, someday." And I think we ought to have that stamped on something, you know, because that was a saying in our family all the time.
Mm-hmm. And it probably stays with the kids and the
Yeah.
grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.